ahead and call us to order. If I get a motion for the minutes, please. Do have a motion for the minutes. They have been seconded and will stand without objection. This afternoon, we will have deliberation and conversation on the FY23 budget. And at this time, if she'll allow me, I'll turn the microphone over to Dr. Birds. If you'll hit your light for me, please.
I'm on. Can you hear me now? Okay, I'll be leading the discussion from here, and my partner in crime will recognize people from there because I have broken my foot. And so, I'm fine. I was klutzy, and you'll see me kind of limping around, but I will be totally leading the discussion here. What I don't have access to is if any of my colleagues are raising their hand, he'll have to let me know. So with that being said, what we're talking about today is the budget. And today we start doing serious decision making. And it's my understanding that what you have brought forward are issues relative to the library, the pay plan, and some questions about RFPs. So I need to ask my colleagues, is there any other area that maybe you've thought of that you need included in the deliberations?
Madam Chair, I want to take you off and then I'll
Yeah,
have to
thank you.
toggle back and forth. Madam Vice Chair.
All right, this is one that just came up. I got an email yesterday from one of the positions that's a grant funded position. Just some clarity on how their pay works and if they receive an increase in pay, just like other city workers. So just kind of some clarity on that one for the record. Okay, thank you.
I see no other lights at this time. Dr. Bird, if you want to respond to that, hit your light, please. Thank you.
Okay. So let's get some information on the board while we're doing our deliberations.
Hit your light for me.
Yeah. This, got it? We really have to fix how this thing works, whoever is in charge of it. This is, yeah, not very functional. All right. Brent.
Present.
Hey, present and accounted for. Let's get rid of some of the easy stuff. The RFPs, you want to fill them in on the RFPs, and also, and this Councilman Henderson, you'll be pleased with this. The form is being designed for the RFPs now relative to accountability, and we're going to see it before it goes out. Okay, so I knew that was something you were interested in. So go ahead. Any other comments about the RFPs?
Sure. We've notified the agencies that we will be issuing RFPs on June 30th of this year, so end of this month. We've notified them, and I'll pass this around, but RFPs will be publicly advertised. They will be sent directly to all agency contacts that we have in our system. The RFPs will include all the instructions needed for nonprofit agencies to submit proposals. Contracts will be awarded through the RFP process as 4-year contracts, just like all of our other procurements, and multiple awards will be allowed for each RFP. We've told them that proposals will be due by July 22nd. Contracts will be awarded by August 22nd, and contract payments will begin in accordance with the contract terms. So that's not a significantly different timeline than what we normally do when we have appropriations to agencies. It may be a couple of weeks different for some, but nothing significant. The categories that we're going to issue RFPs for include community arts programming, early learning partnerships, economic and workforce development, homeless support services, urban design services, youth programming, and finally social services, which we may subdivide further to get more specific, like mental health services versus other social services. So that's what we've communicated out to the agencies. to make sure that they're all aware as soon as possible about the process. I'm working with Tamara in equity and community engagement to answer questions that are coming from nonprofits, and we're probably going to try to put together a one pager just to go ahead and send out just to help give as much information as possible before the RFP goes out. Once the RFPs go out, they're all going to go out at the same time. We will have a pre-bid or a Q&A session available for everyone so that they can ask questions after they've seen the RFPs.
Okay, and Brent and I have spoken about all of this earlier, so I kind of already know some of these answers, but I want them to come from Brent, and I want them to be on record. And you're leaving? All right. Tell them what you told me about there have been very few agency concerns or complaints.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on who you talk to, but I mean, in the finance office, we've gotten very few inquiries about this. Some of them have just been for clarification about, the process and when it will start. I've had a couple about when cash flow will start. I think some of the smaller agencies are more concerned about the overall process and how difficult it might be. And many of those have contacted Tamara to talk through that. So, we're going to put out as much information as possible for these, especially the smaller agencies, to make sure that they have the resources needed to apply. Really, when you think about the priority-based budgeting process as well as the BFO process before that, agencies had to submit pretty robust proposals for budget consideration for appropriations. They will be able to transfer much of that information into the proposal in response to an RFP. It's not going to be significantly different in terms of, the content of the type of work they're doing. The additional things will just include, what performance measures and accountability that we want to be more specific about. I actually have had 3 or 4 agencies contact me saying that they really like this. They are excited about the fact that they can get 4-year contracts and not have to jump through the hoops every year, which takes a tremendous amount of time. So, I think that while there's definitely some concern among some agencies just because it's a change and it's unknown, I think several agencies are also excited about the prospect of this process.
And those are 4-year contracts, provided they perform as they said they were going to perform.
Correct.
Okay.
Just like any other contract.
All right. I see nothing in the queue, so I'm going to move on. All right. Next, the pay plan. And let's loop in with that any answer about grant-funded positions. One of the things we had talked about was the fact that, and SEIU was the one that brought it forward. And one of the things that we got educated on was reminding us of the raises last year. There's a 3% raise this year. And council's concern mainly was not about raises so much as what's the end game. How can people know where they are, where they're going? Is this merit or step? And so I've asked Brent to explain that, and if you would also include grant-funded positions.
Yeah, so the pay plan that was implemented in this fiscal year, which was a result of the work that started before Mayor Kelly took office, that pay plan implementation, as you all know, included some pretty significant increases for many city employees. Some city employees who were already at the midpoint of the range may have only gotten a 3% raise last year. And then we had the appeals process for that entire pay plan implementation, which I think we had around 280 appeals that were successful. And, we've been processing those through the system and issuing retroactive pay for those employees, which we're still working through some of the hiccups in Oracle, but we're getting there. So that pay plan implementation is completed. One thing that we heard early on from the SEIU in particular is the desire to have a step pay plan. So for the sworn personnel, fire and police, we do have a step plan in place, and it's based on years of service and rank, similar to a military style schedule. And they step once every 2 years. The one issue we've had with that in the past, for the past 8 years, we funded those steps, but we didn't apply any cost of living adjustments to that step plan. So that's why they got so far behind over 8 years is that pay plan was developed with 2014 dollars, which is totally different in 2022. So that's one reason why we've included the sworn employees in this year's cost of living adjustment. So their pay plans will all rise by 3%, just like the civilian plan. We have committed to the SEIU verbally that we will evaluate a step plan for the future. And it could be as soon as next budget year. But we need to do a full-blown fiscal impact study for what that means. I mean, we need to make sure that we're being as fair and responsible with taxpayer funds as possible. The school district has a step plan for both teachers and classified staff, where every year of service you get it's equivalent to a little over 1% each year. That's something we could look at, doing something similar to that, where if you start here, you have a step plan. And this is what the SEIU has told us that they really like to see is we want an employee to be able to start on day one and know what their pay will be 25 years from now, based on staying and working through. Just assuming they stay in that same pay grade from now on. Each step could be equivalent to some percentage. Call it 1% for simplicity purposes, and then you could tack on cost of living adjustments on top of that. But we really need to determine what the cost will be and how much it will cost for us to fund those steps every year before we do anything else.
All right. Chair, I noticed, did you have any further questions, Chair Ledford?
I have a few comments, but
Sure, go ahead.
when you're through your list.
You want to finish through the library and everything and then
Yes,
make
ma'am.
I'll
hold
good,
off. Thank you.
Good. Okay. Are there any other questions or concerns? I see nobody in the queue.
I've seen no one in the queue, ma'am.
So for grant funded positions, you may go ahead and answer
Yeah.
that one.
Please.
So generally we don't supplement grant funded positions. The pay increases that are provided by the city, they are applied to grant funded positions to the extent that the grant can absorb the cost or has the ability to do that. Head Start historically has, only gotten the cost of living adjustment that was provided through the federal grant. We have provided like bonuses in the past for Head Start employees, but this is the first year that we're actually supplementing the grant for Head Start in particular, not any other grants. We made it a point as part of the One Chattanooga strategy and the mayor's plan to make sure that we are bringing all those employees in Head Start up to the minimum, and as well as relieving some compression throughout the pay scale. So we are supplementing that grant, and that's the first time we've done that. But generally, we don't supplement grant funded positions. So if you have a grant funded position where the grant can absorb the 3% increase, then those positions would get it. But if not, we generally don't add any additional funds.
Councilwoman Dotley, I believe that would be you, right? Okay.
It is something we've looked at. I mean, we looked at it this year, and if we did supplement every single grant, that cost would require us to likely decrease the overall cost of living increase. But it's certainly something we want to continue to evaluate as we move forward, just to make sure that we are being as fair as possible. And I think it's something that we need to always keep in consideration when we start grant funded positions. Grant funded positions, those employees need to understand that, they're at the mercy of the budget for that grant, unless we can start supplementing all of them.
Thank you. I do have a light from Councilman Hester.
Okay, I'm going to raise a question. Everybody, we're putting on a hard hat, those who in public works, and I think the same question they got to raise is, we're always saying we're doing all these studies in order to bring about changes for their earnings. And that's all we ever hear, study. When we got to implement things that will come into voice. So I raised this question for them. They want to know.
We implemented $30 million worth of pay last year based on a tax increase that was approved by this council.
But it seems like we're so far behind the 8 ball when it comes to this kind of stuff.
Yeah, and again, it was the largest pay implementation in city history this fiscal year. Truck drivers, got up to a 40-50% increase in pay. Average increase was 15%. Minimum was 3%. that's pretty significant and it's unprecedented. And we're doing another 3% this year on top of
Man,
that.
I know change is gradual, but we got to continue that pace. Man. So we want to keep folks working for the city. We got to keep that pace going. So it's on the record. You did say you guys are got to entertain.
If there was a question there, I didn't understand it.
You good, Councilman?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm
All
good.
right. Thank you for your comments. Madam Vice Chair?
Okay, thank you, Brent, for the answer. So I just want to be clear, the only grant-funded positions that are getting a supplemental pay to increase their wages is Head Start.
Correct.
Do you have any idea how many grant-funded positions we have? I know there are several in community development. A general idea of how many we may have?
No, we'll have to,
Okay.
we would have to pull all that data.
Okay. And in the future, now I know you mentioned in the future, we will potentially look at those positions and, want to ensure that they are getting paid equitably as well. I know that they're grant funded, and I'm sure when they come in, they understand that it's grant funded, but then it comes down to employee morale as well as retention when they see everyone else getting these raises and they're not, because they're technically, even though it's a grant funded position, they are considered city employees, so they get city benefits and things like that.
Mhm.
So just moving forward, I would like to see that taking that into consideration, because most of the time, the children in Head Start, their parents may be being serviced by Office of Family
Yeah.
Empowerment or wherever. And so we want those employees to know that they're valued as well. So we don't want to leave anyone out. So I just wanted to make sure I was clear on that, was that the only grant funded positions that are seeing supplemental pay is Head Start, and that's because of the early learning initiative through the One Chattanooga plan. But other offices that serve our community, possibly the families from Head Start, are not seeing that same pay increase, but they do get a cost of living increase depending on if it's maintained within that grant.
Correct.
That's
Yeah.
right. Okay.
So some grant funded employees will get 3% because their grant can afford it.
Okay.
And some don't. It depends on whether or not the grant has enough money to absorb that amount. But that is something that we would like to prioritize for next budget year. It's also, it's not just the cost. We also have to make sure we understand the rules of each individual grant, what is and isn't allowed. We also have to make sure that when we're supplementing in one place, that it's not supplanting in another place, because that would be a violation of federal rules as well.
Right.
So it's not, it's a little more complicated than just supplementing,
Right.
but that doesn't mean we shouldn't evaluate it fully and try to figure out how we can prioritize making sure that those employees get the same pay as everyone else.
And even into this budget season, even if they can't get the supplemental pay, is there any way to adjust for bonuses for those individuals?
Yes, and we're already looking at that,
Oh, okay.
especially for the Office of Family Empowerment.
Thank you, Brent.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Dr. Burrs, hit your light.
Yeah, I see no one else in the queue. Is there anything else about pay plan, RFPs, or grants? And you may need more information. Is there anything today? Okay,
Dr.
let's,
Burrs, I see no lights.
okay. I can cheat a little bit to see who's in the queue, but yeah. All right, let's go to the library. There has been a lot of energy spent on that particular budget, and this is only budget discussion. And then attached to that, Brent, and I'm sure you're going to get questions on that, is how are we working with our youth? They were tied together. So if you would go ahead and address what we're calling the big picture, the library funding.
Sure. So first thing I'll say is I mean, we appreciate all the council members bringing this to light and really talking about what you see as some of the issues. We are going to overhaul the structure of the library to ensure accountability and oversight, while ensuring that we have great programming that's done equitably across the city. This means we're going to be seeking a change in state law to allow us to have the library report directly to the mayor versus an independent board. Immediately, we're going to require the library to submit all of their purchases over 25,000 to city council instead of the library board. So you'll start seeing those as soon as next week. We're also immediately going to require the library board to start reporting regularly to city council. And we need to work with council to determine how regular. But that is something that we want to see happen starting in the near future. One thing that we've looked at, so we went through the library budget and really looked at like what the possibilities would be for a change in funding. Any significant cuts to the library will mean that we have to immediately have layoffs at the library. So any significant change in library funding means that we are cutting people's jobs immediately. Even if we do just minor changes in funding, that means that they'll have to reduce the amount that they provide for employee raises. The increase in the library's budget that's in the proposed 23 budget, it's 181,000. That only covers, that was the amount that they needed to cover the gap to do a full 3% increase. It's not the amount that covers the full 3% increase. It's just the minimum they needed in order to maintain their current operations and have a 3% increase in pay. So any cuts at all would mean that we have to reduce the pay increase for library employees. And again, any significant cuts means that we are laying off employees. With that said, I just want to mention that we do support the library staff and the programming that they deliver every day. There's a wide variety of programming, much of which was mentioned by Councilwoman Coonrod last week. And we think it's prudent to take a year to make the necessary changes in the governance of the library and take a top-down approach. That will be extremely valuable for the city and allow us to have reasonable and necessary changes in next year's budget related to the library.
So are you saying that within the next year, for next year's budget, things will look totally different?
Yes. In terms of the governance structure and how we're operating the library, that would look different. That's assuming that the state law has changed, which we can't really start doing anything with until January.
Till when?
January, when the General Assembly resumes in January is when we would start to see if we have any progress on the changes to state
So
law.
to follow up, the question was that amount of money, taxpayer dollars, without oversight. Are you saying that that has been corrected?
Well, in terms of procurement, yeah, anything that, the salaries are included in the budget, the personnel expenses, but any procurement that they have over $25,000 will start coming to council immediately. We've
Okay.
already instructed the purchasing department to make that change.
All right. So let's separate this out again. I see nothing in the queue. What sort of questions do you have relative to oversight of the library? I need these of record so I can make sure we address them, if you have them. And I have to turn it over to you then.
Madam Vice Chair.
I don't necessarily have a question. I did just want to say thank you to the administration for taking a top-down approach to addressing accountability and impact of the library. I do support the library. The kids I serve, we go to the library because it's free. It's a free trip. But I wasn't a fan of it in its current form. So to know that the administration heard the council, and thank you to Councilwoman Knoll for leading the charge on that one, heard the council, was able to go in quickly to try to make these changes during this budget session. I'm sure it was no small feat. So I just want to say for the record that I appreciate you all doing that. And now we're going to see some significant changes with our library because it'll become a department of the city. Is that correct?
That's what
What
our
you-
aim
what
is.
we're
Our aim
hoping to
is
do.
to have the law changed where it will allow for us to have the library report to the mayor versus an independent board.
Right, which is great. So that helps us a lot with our accountability with the library. And just so, again, for the record, there won't be any reduction of services to constituents or anything of that nature.
No, as long as the proposed budget for the library was the minimum they need to maintain operations and give a 3% increase in pay. If there's any changes to that amount, then we would have to look at layoffs and depending on the amount that was of the change, closing branches. So our hope is that there are no changes and we allow this to move forward while we work through the issues with structure and governance.
Okay, thank you, Brent. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Councilwoman Knoll.
Hi, Brent. Thank you. Couple of questions. I did not see what the library had given us for the funds that was given them as far as programs and who they served and what program was given and who benefited and how many benefited from that. I did ask for that, but I never got that. What I would like to have is a detailed job description, detail of the library staff, so that we can look at that and see what that all entails and-
For all staff members?
for all staff members.
Okay.
Detail. And you said the aim is to get this where it is. Okay, when you said aim is, does that say that it can waiver and not be taken care of? Or is it going to be taken care of?
To the extent that the state legislature allows us, it will be taken care of.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you. We will get those job descriptions to you
Mhm.
as soon as we possibly can, today if possible.
Okay, thank you.
You good, Councilwoman?
I'm good.
All right, thank you, ma'am. Councilman Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Madam Chair. I don't know, I'm not sure who to address that to, since you're
We're all in a
you're
chair.
making us lie.
We're all in a chair today.
So Brent, a couple of things. You know, if we don't have any luck at the state legislature level, may or may not, we certainly can we have the ability to reappoint board members to the library board, correct?
Correct.
Which could be beneficial. Since we're on record as voicing our concerns, one, whatever restructuring we do, I would like to see some measurable impacts. In other words, for the money that we're given, what is our measurable impact? And you know, and there ought to be a way to measure it. If we're given this kind of money, to see what our impact is. The other thing, and I've been on record, is saying I don't think we're getting full benefit of our downtown branch, the building. I'd like to see us get the maximum potential use out of that building, whatever that may look like. And it may look like moving the library out of that building and repurposing that in another way, or it could be that we leave the library there, but we design it in a way that we're getting the maximum potential out of it. I just feel like we are not getting maximum use out of that building, and that's a shame. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Seeing no other lights, Dr. Burrs, if you'll hit your light.
Okay, Brent, just one thing that I'd like to go on record as saying, you said we will do, there was a hedging remark, we will do whatever to the extent that the legislature allows us. We have a very robust team that works with the legislature all the time. And I could name their names, but I've got a great deal of respect for them. And I see no reason why we can't convince the legislature that this needs to happen. Do you know of any reason?
I don't. And
Okay.
I'm with you. I agree
right.
that we have a good shot.
Okay. Because I think the council doesn't want to hear hedging remarks anymore. We want to hear, we're going to do it, whatever it is. And so I think my colleagues down there are going, yeah, I mean, so this needs to get done. And I am on record as saying that. So relative to the library, do you need any more information other than what Councilwoman Knoll asked for. And we can postpone the vote a week. That's not a problem. Brent already knows that. We've already had that discussion. If you need anything else, then please let us know. And I see nothing else in the queue. Did you? All right.
Councilwoman Knoll?
Okay, so Brent, and she kind of jarred my memory on this when she said what she said. So you said a 3% raise increase.
Hmm.
So is that what you have to do?
No, that's the amount that we determined was, the amount that we could afford fiscally. And to make sure with inflation the way it is, we wanted to give as high of a percentage as we could. When you include sworn employees, it costs a lot more than just doing civilian employees. So a 3% raise for all part-time and full-time regular employees, other than some of the grant funded, costs a little over $5 million. Citywide.
Okay, thank you, Brent.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Smith?
Thank you, Mr. and Madam Chair. Brent,
Welcome.
one of the things that makes this difficult when you're looking at an organization that does serve our community, both adults, children, and has important resources for them, does come down to the services that are rendered and how many people are being served. One of the breakdowns that we did receive talked about what the attendance was in fiscal year 19 versus fiscal year 22. And while we're talking about reduction in budget means reduction in staff, let's be realistic about this. If I look at the numbers and they were around 65,000 people served in 2019 and less than 15,000 served in fiscal year 2022, it is responsible to ask the question if we need the amount of staffing at the same level from years ago when we had 4 or 5 times the number of attendants and people being served. So if we needed that many to serve that many, what are they doing with that significant of reduction in attendance? So just adding a little bit of number reality here. It's not about specifically about people, but it is about being responsible with the dollars that this council is approving to be spent. And that's a question that I would love an answer to from the library as to what are we doing in replace of such a significant amount of attendance that's no longer there.
We can provide that.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Councilman. Dr. Burrs, I'm seeing no other lights in queue. Would you like to hit your light?
Okay. The last area had to do with, it kind of morphed into a related concern, even though it's not library budget. And that is budgetary concerns, I'd say budgetary/program concerns about our youth and what we are doing to beef up programs for our youth that apparently are very much needed.
Yes, ma'am. We definitely recognize that this council has made it clear that more resources need to go into city services that serve the community's most vulnerable young people. And given the events this weekend, we're moving quickly to reallocate and reorganize resources and personnel for public safety and youth engagement initiatives. We're going to begin extending hours at community centers as quickly as practicably feasible. Sorry, I can't talk today. We're also working with Uncle Joe to implement his programming on Friday and Saturday evenings at 4 community centers. Based on input from Uncle Joe, we expect to be able to start doing this in the next 2 weeks. So we've had conversations with him about what this would look like. You know, that it needs to be in multiple sites and when it can be started. The Kelly administration will announce millions of dollars of resources or reallocated, either invested or reallocated directly into youth engagement and mentoring programs over the coming 2 or 3 weeks, much of which would include part of the ARP spending plan. And we're going to focus on public safety, both from an intervention and a prevention lens. And finally, Mayor Kelly is going to be working closely with faith, community, neighborhood leaders, and this council to finalize what our public safety and youth engagement plan is going to look like going forward.
Are there any other specific questions, or I see a light, so.
Councilwoman Knoll?
Okay, Brent, you said they would have to report to us for anything over 25,000.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, can we lower that amount that they would have to report to us for?
No, the city code has 25,000 for the bid threshold, which is also the threshold for council approval.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilwoman Hill?
Thank you. As this conversation begins to merge the question of youth services and the role that the library plays in serving our city overall, I'd like to see a really active, engaged partnership between the programming at the library and the programming that we're doing elsewhere in our community centers as that expands. Because there's a lot to be said for engaging the curiosity of an individual and giving them a reason to think bigger about the world. And I think that that is something that the library offers to all of us. We can see a world much bigger than our own home, block, street. So reallocation may come in that form as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Hill. Dr. Burris?
One thing that I may correct, Councilwoman Knoll asked if we can change the threshold for approval. It's a city code. We obviously can. So if the council decided we wanted to lower it for everything for $10,000, we could. As a matter of fact, we raised it from 10,000 to 25. And as a practical matter, we may be raising it even more because costs have gone up. But you have the power to bring forward anything you want that's in the ordinance, because guess who creates the ordinances? We do. So I think, though, what was said is that you can't just do it for one thing. It's got to be across the board. Okay, but yeah, you have the total power to do all that. Is there anything else? And is there anything else about any of these areas or another area? And once Councilman Ledford speaks, he's asked to speak at the end, then my role is to ask you, are you ready to vote for the budget? I can't ever ask you how you're going to vote. That's inappropriate. But are you ready to vote for it? If you're not ready to vote for it, then we postpone it a week. I don't want the pressure to be on you if you're still not comfortable again. Brent, as I said, already knows that I'm not going to ask at this point for, do we have 5 votes? It's unnecessary. Let's be comfortable and get all our questions answered for ourselves and our constituents. So that being said, Chair Ledford.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So Brent, a budget is a very complex document. I've had the honor of now working through 6 of them. And I would like to honestly thank you and your team. I think some of them are here in the back row. This is a very complex document. I cannot underline that enough, and the attention that goes into it. So thank you for your hard work. Dr. Burris, thank you. for leading us once again through the budgeting process, through the education process, through herding us together to make sure we have the information that we need in order to make a decision on how taxpayer dollars are spent throughout the next year. This budget, to me, addressed a lot of key points. It brought other key points to light, and I think that the commitment to those items that were unearthed is a commitment from the administration. And I believe from what I've heard today, you have heard what council's concerns are, and then they will be addressed. This budget has addressed affordable housing as a focus, a $40 million, part of a $40 million over 4 year commitment in paving, which is something that the council has been asking for since I've been here. And I certainly appreciate, and so do my residents of District 4, a 3% across the board on top of a $30 million investment last year into raising pay. I think the commitment there is very strong. Public safety personnel, especially our gun violence specialist, I can't wait to get that person into work. Head Start was addressed. Health insurance came in, I believe, at no extra cost, which in this day and age, let's celebrate that.
We're absorbing it.
Yeah. And an increased early learning commitment, new standards in accounting for performance and impact from taxpayer-funded agencies. Boy, that was big for me. That was really big because we have been screaming for years for an impact measurement and accountability standards that just seem to not come to fruition. And I'm very glad to see that we have taken those steps. And then last but not least, and I hope the press can report this with great fanfare, and that is no tax increase. That's huge. In today's economy, that's huge to accomplish a lot of the goals that we have set out while looking forward to the future and addressing other concerns this council has brought forth. So I just wanted to say thank you. I think the comments about the library is one of those unearthed that we want the library. And I did see whoever started the campaign with misinformation, which we're used to, defunding the library. That is not accurate. And, quite frankly, social media and out there, we're used to it. So that's not the case. We want the library. We love our library. We want it to work for our community. And I think that's okay to ask. And I think whoever works at the library would want that as well. We're talking about $7.3 million in taxpayer funds that we want, and our youth and the services that they provide around this city, we need to get the absolute best services out of that investment, whether it's the use of the building, whether it's the oversight that's, I think, is part of a partnership more than anything that we want desperately to be a part of. So my ending comments is thank you for the hard work, and to your team. And Dr. Burrs, again, thank you for leading us through this budget process. I feel that every opportunity was given for questions to be answered. It was done properly, according to not only laws, but the right thing to do. And I just thank you very much for your leadership on that.
Thank you.
May I add one thing?
I'm raising my hand and it's not happening.
Try it one more time. It's glitching on me. How about that?
Go ahead.
I just wanted to reiterate Councilman Ledford's thanks to the budget staff. They work around the clock to make sure that we have a very accurate budget. They're also, very important in terms of fiscal responsibility for the city. And so I want to thank them as well as the accounting staff, all the department heads, and you all as council with your oversight and with this administration's fiscal responsibility. We are running a surplus this year that we're able to use to invest in affordable housing for years to come. And we're also maintaining a rainy day fund at the highest level we've had in city history. So I just wanted to reiterate that while we're talking about accountability and what we're doing with taxpayer funds, I do want to make sure to put on the record that we have a extremely fiscally responsible administration, and we are making sure that we are very good stewards of taxpayer funds. Thank you.
Thank you, Brent. Okay, so here's the deal. This is an ordinance. It takes 2 readings. We can do one of several things. We can pass the first reading tonight and next week get the answers, or wait till we get the answers for the second reading. You can, tonight it's all we're talking about, but it does take 2 readings. And Brent, I had one more question. If you could get this information, library cards. Everybody doesn't get a library card. They have to pay for it. And there are people who can't do that.
Yeah, I'll confirm, but I believe all city residents get a free library card, as well as all Hamilton County School students.
Yes.
Do they? All right.
County
Then
residents do not.
we had some misinformation then. But if you would just clarify
We'll
that,
confirm.
that all our kids, right, have library cards, whether they're in the county or the city.
Yeah,
That's cool.
all public school children can get a free library
All
card,
right. Okay.
as long as they're enrolled in Hamilton County schools. I
Okay.
believe homeschool students can as well.
Okay. Just clarify that. There's some wrong information out there. Okay. So I'm going to break this down. Are you ready for first reading tonight? And let's do a roll call on that, please.
Madam Clerk, we roll call vote?
Councilman Henderson? Councilman Smith? Councilman Hester?
Yes.
Councilwoman Burrs?
Yes.
Councilwoman Knoll? Vice Chair Dudley? Chairman Lifford?
Yes.
So we will go no farther than first reading tonight. I'm assuming that all of you will get the information you're looking for in order to discuss next week whether we're ready for a second reading. Thank you all, and thank the staff very much. It's been an interesting journey, and thank you, Mr. Chair. Turn it back to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We will now move into our next item in strategic planning, which is a noise ordinance, and it has Dr. Burz's name at the end of it. But given the budget conversation and focus, I may assume that we are not at a point to discuss this any further just yet.
I think that's true.
That would be correct. Okay. Any other members want to comment on the noise ordinance? Okay, we will then, Madam Clerk, we'll keep that on the strategic plan and address that. Also, Mr. Anderson, we had a short-term vacation rental ad hoc meeting today that Councilman Henderson had chaired for us. And we had some really good comments from, I believe, a focus group. If you want to elaborate, and then obviously, Councilman Henderson, please hit your light if you'd like to make additional comments.
I'll elaborate, Chairman, by agreeing that we did have a great committee meeting today, and I want to thank Dan Reuter and his staff at the RPA and the Department of Planning for keeping such great notes on the feedback that we received in the 4 public forums, which was an excellent use of our time and resources. We got a lot of great diversity of opinions from people who have different perspectives on the issue. As it relates to Granicus and the software that we are purchasing to track the violators who are the unlicensed short-term vacation rentals, which is the greatest number in our city. Since I sat down in this room, I have an update since before we talked before 2. The implementation meeting with Granicus is this Friday. They were delayed, took a couple of weeks to get what they needed from the Assessor of Properties office, but we are now meeting with them on Friday to implement it. So within the next couple of weeks, we should have it up and running in the city. And the day we have it up and running, we will be able to see where the unlicensed operators exist.
Very good. And you'll keep us posted on that.
Absolutely, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councilman Henderson, anything you'd like to add on today's ad hoc meeting? Very good. Appreciate your leadership in that and maintaining course in that conversation. Moving on to AV upgrades, Councilman Smith, if we have any updates, I think the last time we had lights on order and we discussed it. Do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, everything.
Okay.
None of that information has changed.
No, since last time. Very good. I appreciate that. That was on our list, and I didn't think we had much discussion on that. Moving on to other business, we do have pending legislative matters on our list, but I see none pending presentations, educations, future legislation, and education sessions. I see none. Moving into future considerations, we will actually cover that in agenda session. So I'm going to skip to that item. Any other comments before I move into, if you would take a look at item X, your board appointments. And Chris, I believe you had an update on all vacancies and it has been corrected and posted, correct?
Most of them have.
Most of them?
As soon as I tell you that it's accurate, I get an email from someone saying that they're resigning from a board.
Well, it's,
So that's a good way to get resignations, I think. But it's going to be a constantly changing and constantly updating site. But if you look at the city page on Chattanooga.gov, that was accurate as of Friday.
very good.
And more
And it
changes
being
to be made.
organic as it is, we're keeping up with it weekly.
Weekly, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
so I'll tell you that I personally look at it weekly once if this council has made appointments in the prior week. So for example, when this council either confirms a mayoral appointment or appoints someone, that gets put into resolution form, which then has to go through the normal resolution process after the council has passed it. Nicole or someone else on the staff sends those resolutions to the staff manager for that particular board. They update Granicus and internally in our system, and that's what posts to the website. So there's usually about a week or so of lag, but it's accurate.
Very good. I do want to compliment you on your focus on the boards. I know we have seen not only a dedicated effort, but a lot of appointees coming through. And I think that's a testament to the commitment you made overseeing our boards and commissions. So I want to thank you for that.
Thank you, Chairman. I appreciate that. And I'm going to send out a new updated graphic to the council this week that you will be able to share once again to your Facebook, Instagram, other social media accounts, and encouraging people in your districts and in your networks to apply for various boards. And I'll tell you that we have 49 boards and commissions in the city government, 49. So I'm not going to send you a graphic with 49 board names on it, but we've got more than 3 that have vacancies. So it's just going to say 3, and it's going to be like we're promoting some sort of event. It's these 3 and many more. So make sure you're focusing on that when you're telling people in your district they don't have to just apply for 2 or 3 examples that we've given.
And Chris, as council looks for appointees from their districts, they can always come to you for information regarding the board responsibilities, meeting times, and whatnot to help speed up the process. Is that correct?
Absolutely. I welcome
Okay.
it.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
I do see a light. Councilman Smith, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Chris, for I know we'd asked a few times and it takes a lot of work to try to get these worked out. On the Health Education and Housing Facility Board, it says 2 seats, but then also says districts 1, 3, and 8 are needed. Are there 2 seats for all 3 of those to fill, or would that be each one has a seat? Do you know offhand?
There is an issue with that board as to the residency of 2 of the members that is currently being worked out in the city attorney's office.
Okay.
So there are at least 2 vacancies for those districts, but there was an issue when the previous council in the previous administration went from a 7-member board to a 9-member board, and they're working that out.
That's exactly what I thought. Thank you, Chris. Appreciate it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilman Smith. Before we adjourn, let me circle back up to council agendas under Parks and Public Works. We do not have a Parks and Public Works meeting today, just in case you're following along. In that we do have a Planning and Zoning Committee meeting this afternoon that I know Councilwoman Hill is just super excited to go. Oh, there's her light.
We are going to be approaching the planning and zoning meeting by focusing on the cases that have had opposition at Planning Commission. So I'll ask Karen to provide you all with an additional sheet that reorders the agenda so that that'll be a little easier to follow along during that meeting. And if you have a case that did not have opposition and you want to see a full presentation, we're happy to do that. We just thought we would start with the ones where there's some concern from the community first.
Very good. Thank you, Councilwoman. Madam Chair of the Planning and Zoning Committee. Any other comments or questions before we adjourn out of, welcome, Councilwoman. Good to see you. Just in time. Before we adjourn into our 3:30 agenda session, seeing none, we are adjourned till 3:30.
Yeah, but our policy. We should say that. We should put that. Yeah. I was just saying, we didn't start. I don't know
Because they were listed as a different house. I think they're.
that's the. Changed how they.
Yeah. But I think they were.
Needs to be But now we're open to you. I'm David. I'm David.
I thought you wanted her.
Good. I actually did have a question. There's a lot of conversations about the library. I don't know what background is that.
I mean, we presented a budget for the library, I think the same as last year with a small increase. Really, it's the council.
So your gas. Okay.